So, light of truth day. So what is this truth we're talking about? This is the truth that the mystics testified to, the truth of our true nature, who we really are and what the whole world really is. And it's only realizable through a special direct way of knowing, a direct way, a non-conceptual way of knowing. It's very important. This bypasses the thinking mind, the figuring things out and all that. The thinking mind is useful on a spiritual path, certainly reason and all that, but it's not going to give you the truth that the mystics are talking about. So mystics usually have a special word for this kind of knowledge: enlightenment, realization, gnosis, union, waking up, things like that. Different traditions have different words for it. But it is distinct from our normal idea of knowledge. It's very important. And then the question is, well, how do we have this realization? And there's one way in the become very popular in the West over the last few years. I think everybody here probably, or most of you anyway, have heard of it. Neti. Neti is a kind of inquiry. It comes from the Hindu Vedantic tradition in India, and it's based on, it goes back to a teaching in the ancient Upanishads, which says it's really the sort of the slogan of Indian non-dual mysticism. That thou art, tat vam asi, that's in Sanskrit, that thou art. And that is the Brahman. Brahman is their name for ultimate reality. This changeless, eternal, beyond words, beyond form, beyond names, that's everywhere and nowhere, because it's not a thing. And it's and that refers to Atman, your true self, not your little ego self. So the question then is, well, why don't we know this? Why don't we know that we are the ultimate Brahman? And most of us don't. Normally, I didn't. For the first 40 years of my life, I had no idea. And it wasn't until I started on a spiritual path that I even heard about anything like this. So most of us just haven't even heard teaching like that, especially in the West today. So why don't we know this is the big question. Well, we are falsely identified with an ego self, a little separate self made up of things like bodily feelings and emotions and thoughts, and mostly thought stories and ideas about things and so forth. And we feel like we're sort of trapped in this little body and all this stuff's going on. And we look out there and there's the big world out there. And what the mystics say of all traditions is, no, that's not true. That's not. It's not that there isn't a body and thoughts and emotions and all that, but that's not who you are exclusively. Let's put it that way. You're actually everything. So the image for this in the East is like a stalk of grass. The inner stalk is covered by these sheaths, outer stalks of grass. And you have to peel away the outer stalks to get to the inner stalk. Here's what the great Shankara, the great Vedantic sage of the 7th century, here's what he says. Oh, I'm getting old, I need my glasses. Wrapped in the 5 coverings, the Atman remains hidden, as water of a pond is hidden by a veil of scum. A man must separate this Atman from every object of experience, as a stalk of grass is separated from its enveloping sheaths. So how do you actually do this? That sounds interesting, but what does it mean to do it? Well, one way would be through a practice of inquiry, neti. And you start in a formal meditation, learn to sit in with an undistracted mind, and then you simply watch the phenomena that you believe you are. So you're sitting there, like a little body sensation. Oh, that's me. Oh, is it? Well, watch it. It passes away. And watch this desire to scratch it. Okay, you scratch that itch, but that desire passes away. You watch thoughts particularly come. Thoughts about me. Oh, I'm sitting here in meditation. Well, that must be who I am. But that thought passes away. Everything you think you are, if you watch it long enough, you'll see it arises and passes away. It's impermanent. But you, the one who is aware of all this phenomena arising and passing away, you don't arise and pass away. And then another phenomena comes along. Oh, another phenomena. But this awareness itself is not a phenomenon. It's not a thing. You can't point to the awareness. Say, what color is the awareness? How much does the awareness weigh? What shape is the awareness? But it's undeniable. So you start doing this practice and you start watching, and your own experience convinces you. It's not, Shankar's never going to convince you by words and concepts and ideas. Your own experience starts to convince you. You start to get insight into how impermanent all the stuff you thought you is. And then you take this practice on the road, so to speak. You don't just do it in formal meditation. You do it wherever you are, whatever you're doing. In the back of your mind, there's just this watching and this understanding. Well, this can't be me. I can't be this. See, I'm not this thought. Neti. Not this. That's what it means. Not that. Not this. Not this thought. Not this phenomena. Not this gurgling of my stomach. Not this desire for some cookies. Not this aversion. All these things come and go, but the awareness does not come and go. The awareness that is not a thing, but is really a no thing. And if you do this process and keep it up, chances get very good that one day you're actually going to realize this shift of identification takes place. Because you're convinced through this experience. It just, oh my gosh, it happens. And then you'll never be fooled again. Life will go back to normal, or maybe it won't for you, it doesn't matter, but you're just not fooled by it again. Thoughts still arise, emotions still arise, all that stuff still happens, but it's not me, fundamentally. I like to think of my body-mind as a donkey. I follow, St. Francis used to call his body Brother Donkey. And I think it's, for me anyway, it's a wonderful, establishes this relationship. It's not really me, but I take care of my donkey. In the Middle Ages, donkeys were, valuable animals. They weren't just, we say, oh, you're an ass, and that's an insult. But a donkey is, works hard, carries your wood for you from the forest, all that. And so you want to take care of your donkey. I want to take care of this donkey. And then we sometimes have arguments. The donkey wants to eat. Well, we're meditating now, donkey. We're going to eat in a little bit. Just be patient. I have conversations like that with my donkey. There's a little bit of what it's like to be enlightened for me. Anyway, the point is, this practice of neti is a practice of saying, not this. I am not this, not this. And when you're saying that, you're saying Brahman is not this, not this, not this, because you are ultimately Brahman. So it leads to this realization that actually Brahman is a no thing, not one thing among other things, not a big daddy in the sky, separate from everything. So you find this practice actually and by the way, if you want to do this practice, if you want further instructions, you can read my book, chapter 29, The Way of Selflessness. And I think we probably have a talk, a whole series of talks from a retreat on self-inquiry or something like that. You can look in the audios and I'm sure you'll find it be under something like self-inquiry. Probably won't be under neti, but you'll find it. Anyway, you can check that out if you want to get more really detailed instructions. But you can also find this practice in other traditions, not just in Hinduism. Here's the Samyutta Nikaya Buddhist Sutra. Therefore, whatever there be of bodily form, of feeling, perception, or mental formation, whether one's own or external, whether gross or subtle, lofty or low, far or near, one should understand according to reality and true wisdom. This does not belong to me. This am I not. Same practice. Buddhist monk sitting there, watching all this phenomena rising, passing away. Same practice. In the Abrahamic traditions, they have what the Christians call the via negativa, the negative way. And a lot of Christian theology talks about all the positive attributes of God, but the via negativa eliminates all attributes of God. That God isn't this, isn't that, and eventually arrives at what God is. Here's a description of this by the anonymous author of the Cloud of Unknowing. I think it was 14th century. Yes, 14th century. Great manual, by the way. I have it in the library. Cloud of Unknowing, very accessible, and it's about practice, especially if you came from a Christian background and aren't totally turned off by Christianity, because you'll see there's a side of Christianity very different from what you were probably brought up in, and this is a very good example of that. Anyway, here's what he says, or she might, we don't know. It's an anonymous author. However much a man may know about every created spiritual thing, his intellect will never be able to comprehend the uncreated spiritual truth, which is God. But there is a negative knowledge which does understand God. It proceeds by asserting everything it knows, this is not God, until finally he comes to a point where knowledge is exhausted. So this is a neti practice. Everything that you can think of as God, well, no, it's actually not God. God transcends all that. But it's interesting, the last line here, he says, you come to a point where knowledge is exhausted. And the Christian mystics are big on talking about the way to know God is through unknowing. And that's the point. You don't finally come to know God because you figured it out. When you get to the point where you can't figure it out, and the mind shuts up. Oh, there's the possibility of this realization, this union, the Christians call it. Rumi, a great Sufi, the Sufis, the mystics of Islam, he's got a wonderful little line. He says, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Cleverness is confusion. Bewilderment is vision. So bewilderment is something about when our normal knowledge is exhausted, so a possibility opens up for something else, this mysterious enlightenment or whatever. So anyway, if you practice neti night and day, really commit yourself to this practice, I said there's a very good chance you will eventually wake up. And there's a very good example of this among our own community. David Cunningham, this was his practice. Is David out there? Yes, he is right there. Wave us, David. This was his practice. And if we had time, I would ask him to describe it here, but we don't. But he does have an account of awakening on our website. If you go to our homepage, right on our homepage, there's accounts of awakening. Click through to that. And his is called, Where is the Boundary? So just scroll through those until you find the video talk, Where's the Boundary? And he'll tell you how he got there, whole trip, what happened. Very, very interesting, very clear, and a beautiful talk. So, but there's another practice, seemingly contradictory practice, that is gaining some interest in the West here. In the last, I don't know, couple of decades, probably around 10, 20 years, but I think it's growing interest. I'm way off the circuit of popular teachings and all that, stuck here in Eugene. We all think we're the center of the world, but we're really, we're in the boondocks, For spiritual stuff, it's California and what's that county north of San Francisco? Marin County. Yes. Anyway, but I'm getting clues that maybe this is going to be the new thing, the new big thing. See, this practice is called iti. Now, interesting, neti is the negative iti. The n in front of iti turns it into neti, and so it really means not this. So iti means this, and this, and this. So that sounds completely different. This also goes back to the Upanishads, and there's a teaching that says everything is a form of God. Here, the actual teaching is God is in truth the whole universe. So everything you see or experience is God. So here's a pencil. This is God, right? And this, the gong striker, and this clock. Where's the camera here? Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay. Gotcha. That's the clock, see? Okay. That's God. And this glasses case. Wow, disorientating. Okay, anyway. So this is you go, the practice is everything that you see, the practice is recognizing, oh, this is God, and this is God, and this is God, rather than neti, not this, not this, not this. So then the question is actually, how do you do it? Well, well, first of all, I got to say, this is also attested to by other mystics of other traditions. Here's Tibetan Buddhist master Dudjom Lingpa, 20th century. All apparent phenomena are not other than the ground of being, but are of one taste with that ground itself. Like the reflections of all the planets and stars in the ocean that are not other than the ocean, but one taste with water itself. So all this phenomena is like reflections in a water, in a pond of water or the ocean, that they're all the same in the sense that they're all the substance here is water. You taste it. You taste the reflection of the moon, and it'll taste salty, and you taste the reflection of the star, and it'll taste salty. Everything tastes of God, or of the ground of being in the Tibetan terms. Now listen to the 14th century Christian mystic Meister Eckhart. The man who is God essentially present to him grasps God divinely, and to him God shines in all things. For everything tastes to him of God, and God forms himself for that man out of all things. Ooh, isn't that interesting that this taking a taste as the sense to use here? Very interesting. I can guarantee you, Dudjom Lungpa never read Meister Eckhart. He was up there in some cave in the Himalayas. He never read Meister Eckhart. But they all come up with the same metaphors. It's very interesting. Cross cultures, cross traditions. Here's the 13th century Sufi sheikh. Sufis are the mystics of Islam, as I said. Ibn Arabi. The Gnostics, now Gnostic is a term for enlightened person. Gnosis is one of the terms for enlightenment in the West particularly. The Gnostics never cease witnessing forms within themselves and outside themselves. And that is nothing but the self-disclosure of the real. The real, al-Haq, is a name of God. The truth, the real, the ultimate reality. The real, like the real, everything else is not quite real. So everything is a self-disclosure of the real. So again, here's this gong striker. Oh, it's just a gong striker. Oh, no. This is a self-disclosure of Allah. Right here. Right here. Anyway, as I said, in the West, I think there's a growing interest in traditions that emphasize iti. And it sounds a little more positive, you know. Sounds like more world affirming. All this is God rather than neti. And maybe it's a little easier to practice. So I thought I'd check this out. And actually, there's one text that I've heard it specifically come from in one tradition, and that's the Tantric Kashmir Shaivite tradition. And last year, the winter and the fall, the winter and spring, Jim and Kimberly Carson came down from Portland. If any of you were here on the Sunday for a guest speaker, gave 3 talks, and they're teachers and longtime students of Kashmir Shaiva's tradition. We have them recorded too. You can check out those talks. And they talked about iti in those talks. But I've never actually come across a practice called iti, like how you actually do this. So I actually talked to Kimberly and Jim told me about a practice his guru Muktananda gave him years ago. And it's a bhava practice. Bhava means cultivation. And the idea was to cultivate this idea that everything is Shiva. So he didn't, I don't think, use iti particularly, but it's still this idea going around trying to remember that, that this isn't just a gong striker. My God, this is Shiva right here. And so now, how do you actually do this, though? That's the really interesting thing. The quotes I read you from the mystics who talked about finding this knowledge that everything is a self-disclosure of the divine. This is after they woke up. Now they see everything as a self-disclosure of the divine. But how do you see that before you woke up? Okay. So I did find in Kashmir Shaivite tradition, there's a wonderful poet, teacher, saint, mystic called Lalishwari. She was 14th century. And we've got one of her books in the library. I think we have several now, actually. But it's a very slim book. It was actually translated by Muktananda, or at least under his auspices. And it's very easy to read and just packed full of just juiciest teachings. Lovely. You can check that out from the library. It's called Lalishwari. If you ask Jennifer, Muktananda's Lalishwari, she'll know how to direct you to it. Anyway, here's some of her teachings. They sound very much like she's doing an iti practice. Here's what she says. First of all, make your eyes sharp by seeing Shiva everywhere. O Lali, then it will not take long to attain that. In fact, you are already your own attainment. So she's talking about this idea that we're all actually enlightened. We don't know it yet. We don't gain anything by enlightenment, and we don't get some new energy or something like that. It just, the veils are lifted. We let go of this idea with this small self, and boom, there it is. All along it's been that way. So anyway, but how do you actually then do this? Make your eyes sharp so you see Shiva everywhere. Well, she used a mantra to remind her all day long that, hey, this is what we're about. We're going to try to cultivate this seeing Shiva everywhere. And here's what she says about that. If you repeat Shiva, Shiva, all the time, day in and day out, if your mind is detached from pleasures of the world as you lead your worldly life, then you will truly become free of duality. So, first of all, this thing about be detached from pleasures of the world. It's sounding a little ascetic there. But you got to really remember, detached in spiritual terms means only one thing: neither grasping nor rejecting. So it does not mean pushing away the pleasures of the world. It means not being enthralled completely and attached to them and living just for the pleasures of the world. But it doesn't mean denying the pleasures of the world. You get a nice piece of, Jennifer gave me a little piece of peach from our garden. Oh, wonderful. And then the first tomato. Tomatoes out of your garden, it's a different species than what you get in the store. I've forgotten. It's just a different species. Amazing. Okay, so that's great. So, but then you're not attaching it all day long. You think, oh, I got to have the tomatoes tonight with dinner, and where can I get more of those tomatoes, and da-da-da-da-da. And then she says, your mind will be free from duality. If everything is Shiva, this is Shiva, and this and that. The dog poop in the yard is also Shiva. that you have to go clean up. So this freedom from duality is, if everything is a self-disclosure of the real, if everything tastes of the divine, yes, that's right. The dog poop does too. So the tomato, that wonderful little tomato, and the dog poop. Okay. So then you practice this, and you begin to realize, no, you have to expose yourself to negative as well as positive situations. Shiva is in the ugly situations and violent situations, not just in the beautiful, pleasant, wonderful things of life, which is easier to see Shiva. You know, you go walk through the redwoods and oh my gosh, yeah. But when you walk through a devastated forest that's been burned because of the climate change, that's Shiva too. That's Shiva too. So then she carries on. She continues, Lali. If you consider yourself and others to be the same, if you consider the day of happiness and the night of pain to be the same, if your mind has become free of duality, then you have seen the Lord of Lords. O Lali, all your life you were deluded. Only Supreme Shiva is everywhere. So practicing iti may not be really so much more world affirming than neti, or even easier than neti. Frankly, I find neti instructions pretty precise and easier to remember to do. Oh, not this, not that. I'm not trying to see something I don't see yet, like that this is Shiva. If I don't see it, I don't know how I don't see it. Although I must say, on my path, I used to read things like Meister Eckhart, where he said, God shines in all things for someone who's awake. And I'd sit there and I would be sitting on my couch and I'd pick up the little pillow and I'd look at it. I'd say, well, what does he see that I don't see? So it did start to change my attitude about things. And I think that was important. It wasn't really a practice that I did formally or anything like that. So it's very good, I think, to understand this practice and be aware of it and this teaching, and as much as possible to cultivate it. But I personally find the neti easier to actually put into practice as a formal practice. But that's just me. Okay. In any case, there's a long-standing debate in India between the Vedantists and the Tantrics about this business of neti versus iti. It's actually expanded philosophical debate about the nature of reality and delusion and Maya and all that. And essentially, I'm way oversimplifying this. The Vedantists say God is nothing, and the Tantrics say God is everything. Well, first of all, if God is everything, then God isn't some specific thing, then God is no thing, and that means God is nothing. And to me, it's semantics, comes down to. But they have fun doing this. But I like a good debate myself. But I would suggest you don't take this too seriously. And I suspect, as the iti teachings gain popularity here in the West, I think that debate's going to follow them. And you're going to hear a lot of this debate because people love debate. Even mystics love to debate. Shankar was a big debater. But still, certainly don't get sidetracked and think that there is an answer outside of your own realization. That's the only place you're actually ever going to find a satisfactory answer. So enjoy a debate or listen to it or whatever, but don't let that, as I say, hypnotize you. So also, there is actually a third way that makes use of both iti and neti, both something and nothing. And I don't know that it has an actual name, but we could call it the realizing the gap. So here's what, 14th century Kabbalist Rabbi Joseph ben Sholem, Barcelona, says, and he's Kabbalists were the mystics of Judaism, are still. In every transformation of reality, oh, I got to say one other thing. In Kabbalism, one of the ways you talk about God is Ein Sof. God is without limit, nothing is one translation of that. So, in every transformation of reality, in every change of form, or every time the stature of a thing is altered, the abyss of God's nothingness is crossed over and for a fleeting mystical moment becomes visible. So every time there's a change of form of some kind, this nothingness becomes visible. It's the thing, and then the thing changes, and nothing, and then things again. Here's the 20th century mystic Ramana Maharshi, and he used to teach a Vedantic version of this. The self, that's the Atman, the true self, in its purity is experienced in the intervals between two states or between two thoughts. You should realize this interval as the abiding, unchangeable reality, your true being. Huh? He never read Joseph ben Sholem. I can guarantee that. I bet he never heard of Kabbalism. He might not even know what a rabbi was. And there's even a tantric version from a text called Centering. I can't pronounce the Sanskrit. I recently learned the Sanskrit name. It's Vijnana Bhavara Bharata, something like that. But if you look in the book Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, oddly enough, in the back of the book, there's a little, book included in the book from the Kashmir Shaivite tradition called Centering. And these are a series of 112 little pithy instructions that Shiva gives to his consort Devi about how to wake up. And a lot of them are about looking for this transition between one form and another. For instance, this is actually the very first two combined. Radiant One, that's to Devi, a sweet book. He has a very loving relationship with Devi. And by the way, Devi's completely enlightened. The only reason she asks these questions is for our benefit, so that teaching will result. If two enlightened people sit down together, no teaching happens. It's only if somebody asks a question. Another little funny digression in the Buddhist tradition, in the Mahayana tradition anyway, in a lot of the Buddhist sutras, Ananda, who was Buddha's favorite disciple, he was the last to wake up. And the reason he was the last to wake up is because all Buddha's other disciples wake up and they stop asking questions. But we need somebody to ask the question. So Ananda's role is to not wake up, so he can be the one who gets the teachings out of the Buddha. And the tone of it is cute because Ananda asks a question, and then the Buddha answers, "Oh, Ananda, haven't I told you 1,000 times?" And you get this is the kid behind the 8 ball in school, But he's absolutely necessary to the whole tradition. So Devi's playing the same role here. So, Radiant One, this experience may dawn between two breaths, as breath turns from down to up, and again as breath curves from up to down. Through both these turns, realize. Now, I love this because, you start off meditating, especially here, and in a lot of Buddhist traditions, the first thing you learn to do is meditate on your breath. This is beginner's meditation, very beginning meditation. And everybody wants to move on from that. Oh, this is boring. Sit there watching the breath. Oh, now we're going to do a little choiceless awareness. So we let go of the breath and expand our awareness. Oh, goody. And you go from that to that and subtler things. And, the first time you sat down to watch your breath, if you just watch closely, if you watch the turn, boom, you wake up, you can skip the whole rest of the path. So here, it says, okay. And then it goes on, other things like, the gap between silence and sound. When the sound arises out of silence or when the sound goes back to silence, that's an opportunity. Looking away from an object. There's the object there, and now it's gone. I look away. I'm looking at the gong, now I look away. So, and then my favorite, because it was the one that the key to my own awakening, the moment of falling asleep, when sleep has not yet come and external wakefulness vanishes. At this point, being is revealed. And those of you who read my book, Naked Through the Gate, know that it was actually that very verse pointing to that very state that was the spark of my enlightenment. So naturally, this is particularly dear to me. In any case, these are all, again, different traditions, but they're all pointing to the same practice or the same teaching, what to look for. And one of my favorite actual instructions in this comes from the Taoist tradition. And this is in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, the legendary founder of Taoism. And he describes this practice. And I have to tell you about a couple of things. The idiom, one of the idioms in Chinese, the myriad creatures, does not refer to just little squirrels and butterflies and stuff. The myriad creatures means everything. It's an idiom for everything. Another idiom is the 10,000 things. The myriad creatures, the 10,000 things. So we're talking about all phenomena. So here's what he says. And he's talking about a meditation practice. Now, he never mentions meditation, but he obviously means that. I maintain inner stillness. The myriad creatures all rise together, and I watch their return. Each returns to its root in stillness. This is what is meant by returning to one's true nature. Returning to your true nature, you know what is eternal. Knowledge of the eternal is called enlightenment. So, holding firm to stillness. Now I'm being still, and I'm watching the myriad creatures. I'm watching what? Just like in a neti practice. But now I'm not saying neti, not this, not that. I'm not using my mind to identify anything. I'm just watching a thought arise. I'm watching a desire arise. I'm watching a bodily sensation, itchy. And I watch where they go. And where do they go? Something, and it goes to nothing. Something goes to nothing. That gap, the alteration, the state of something. Right back to what Joseph Ben Sholem said. So I thought we would end this talk with trying this practice right here. Okay, I'm going to give you a little informal sort of guidance here, and it won't be that long. So here we go. So you might want to begin by just focusing your attention on your breath. So watching your breath. It arises, turns around, passes away. Just to settle your mind a little bit. Now let go of your breath and just relax completely. Let your body completely relax. No need to make any effort. Just watch, observe. How each thing, phenomena that you experience arises and passes away. Sounds arise and they pass away. Bodily sensations arise, pass away. Thoughts arise, they pass away. My voice arises and passes away. Where does the sound of my voice pass away to? Watch where your breath passes away to. Wiggle your right index finger. Where did that sensation pass away to? Remember the face of a dear friend. Let it go. Where does it go to? phenomena arises, is for a while, and then passes away and is not. Make no effort to grasp onto the is not, the no thing, the absence of what was. Just observe and allow it to reveal itself in its own good time. All right. Okay. Until we see you again, peace to you all.